Hello again and welcome back eNCA Weekend. Now, one of the regulations of the nationwide lockdown, obviously, is that you stay at home. But you can still travel from the comfort of your couch. How, you ask? Well, by reading a book, of course. This week, we're going to look at two books that take us on journeys into the past. Our reviewer, Andrea van Wyk, joins us. The first one, Andrea, good morning to you. British writer Damien Barr. The book is called You Will Be Safe Here, The Second Boer War. You like this one?
I did, very much so. So it tells the fictional story of a Boer woman called Sarah. And she's left alone on her farm with her 6-year-old son because her husband is fighting in the war. So when the British arrive on her doorstep, she's completely alone and left defenseless. She's forced by them to go into one of the concentration camps where we, of course, know the conditions were horrific. And she then has to try and fight for her own life and that of her little boy. I spoke to Damien Barr. He was in our Cape Town studio a couple of weeks ago, that, of course, before the lockdown occurred. He was here for the Stellenbosch Woordfees. I asked him why he decided to write a book about the Second Boer War when we already have so many books about it. Let's have a listen.
I mean, there aren't as many books about the Second World War in the UK, certainly, as there are here, and nowhere near as many as there are about the First World War and the Second World War, which are a huge part of our national story. In the UK, we really aren't taught the Boer War in school. It's not a part of our cultural history. And so for me, I wanted to really explore this absence, this empty space, to find out about the stories that were in it. And I knew nothing about the British concentration camps. I did not know that more women and children died in those places than soldiers died in the war. So for me, it was a process of discovery, and I want to take readers on that journey with me, which is why I take them to Bloemfontein with this character Sarah and her son Fred.
Now, Andrea, one of the things I imagine that might cause some conversation in literary circles is that you have an Englishman writing from the perspective of a Boer woman. Tough, surely, for the author to navigate?
Absolutely. I was very interested by this. Why would an English man choose to write from the perspective of an Afrikaans woman? And he does this very well. It's very believable. There was never a point where I felt that, you know, this isn't working for me. I did ask him about this as well. Why did he choose to do this? Let's listen.
I just think there are so many stories written by men, by soldiers, about war. And war, as Emily Hobhouse, the brilliant Englishwoman who travelled to South Africa and exposed the horrors of these camps, as Emily wrote and discovered, war affects women and children much more than it affects the soldiers. You know, the soldiers are there fighting, but the women and children are at home, or they're sucked into the conflict in some terrible way. You know, it was women and children who died in those camps in such great numbers, not men. So I wanted to write about the story of war from the woman's perspective, because it seemed to me like, you know, Sarah was the person who was having to make a living, having to survive during this time. And what would you do in this situation? I want the reader to be put in the position that Sarah was put in. You know, what would you do to protect your child if they didn't have enough food, enough water, enough medicine? And of course, that's a situation that many people still face today.
Well, the television talk show host Graham Norton says it's a gripping, heartbreaking tale of uncomfortable histories and the resilience of love. The publisher is Bloomsbury. The book is called You Will Be Safe Here. Damien Barr is the author. Then you went to Norway in the 1600s. Absolutely.
So Karen Millwood Hargrave's first book for adults, she's a very well-known young adult writer, called The Mercies. I knew, and a lot of us know, about the Salem witch trials of the late 1600s, but I was unaware that it happened in these really far-flung places as well, like a Norwegian island called Vardø. So in the 1617, what happened was on Christmas Eve, in this village, all the men die. They go out fishing, there's a massive thunderstorm, and they're all killed. And the women are left to fend for themselves. They have to become very independent. They have to learn how to fish. But this is frowned upon because they're women. Of course, they shouldn't be doing this.
Women should not be fishing.
Women should absolutely not be fishing.
In the 1600s.
In the 1600s. Yes. And they carry on like this for about 18 months. And then somebody is sent to this island, this devoutly religious man from Scotland, and he has to act as a kind of commissioner. And he is not pleased with seeing these very independent women. And the moment he arrives, these jealousies start occurring among the women, and they start reporting each other for transgressions. And the worst of this, of course, is witchcraft, for which you get burned at the stake. So a lot of these women were tortured to confess, even though they were not witches, because those things don't really exist. They weren't witches, they were tortured into confessing, and this is what happens. But the story is really beautiful. It's really beautifully written. I know it sounds quite grim, but there's a lot of hope in it as well. These beautiful friendships that the women form with each other and how they help each other. So there's a lot of hope at the end of the book as well. It's not just a grim tale, but fascinating to read.
Andrea van Wyk, you'll join us again next Saturday. Thank you very much indeed. Our regular book reviewer to recommended books. As I said earlier, you don't just need to spend the entire 21 days watching television. You should also catch up on the reading as well.